Good to go, Eric.
Just 1 minute, I get the live stream going. Should be good to go, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Eric. Good evening. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is a meeting for the Conservation Commission of December 19th, 2023. With the recording secretary, please take the roll call.
Commissioner Ancona. Commissioner Conway.
Present.
Commissioner Paskowitz.
I see him online, but I don't know if he's.
Okay. Commissioner Sadil. Commissioner Wimett.
Here.
I need to be unmuted. This is Alan Paskowitz. I need to be unmuted.
You are unmuted.
You are unmuted, Alan.
Well, then why didn't you respond when I said I was present?
We didn't hear you at the time.
You were still muted.
Commissioner Wimett.
Here.
Chairman Zellick.
Here. Next item on the agenda is acceptance of minutes. We need approval of the regular minutes from the meeting of 11/21/23. Any corrections to the minutes?
None from Commissioner Paskowitz.
I make a motion to accept the minutes. Commissioner Conway.
Thank you, Commissioner Conway. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Abstentions? Seeing none, passes unanimously. Moving on to public participation on agenda items. Each speaker is limited to 2 minutes. Any member of the public wishing to come forward? Anybody online?
No one is online, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. We'll go on to new business. Begin with application 2023-16 for drainage improvements, grading and pavement within the upland review area at 67 Payne Road. Applicant BSC Group Incorporated, owner State Point Properties. Contact Frank Vasca.
Mr. Chairman, just a note, Commissioner Sadil just texted me. He said he lost Zoom. He dropped it, so you still have 4. But
Just let me know when he returns.
All set.
Good evening. You just state your name for the record.
Very good. Good evening. Ladies and gentlemen of the commission, for the record, my name is Francis Vaca. I'm a professional engineer at the BSC Group in Glastonbury, Connecticut. I'm here on behalf of Stay Point Properties, their developer, who are developing the 67 Payne Road redevelopment in Newington. I also have presumably on the line, Eric, I'm not sure if you sent it over to her. I forwarded on to her.
Benno's on.
Oh, good. Okay, very good. So Jen Benno, she is a soil scientist, I should say a wetland scientist with soil science and environmental services. She was responsible for the flagging of the wetlands associated with this development. And again, we are here for 67 Payne Road, which will become the future home of Sunbelt Rentals. The Sunbelt up on the Berlin Turnpike would like to relocate to this current location. We are here tonight to respectfully request administrative approval under section 12.1 of the Newington IWWC regulations. I would like to present my presentation tonight with the intent of proving to you that this design is sound and in accordance with all of your regulations, And I would like to request with the 12.1 section that we can hand it off to Eric after we satisfy the statutory requirements so that we can get this approved. Tonight on my agenda, I'm going to go through a brief existing review of the site. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the erosion sediment control that we are proposing for the site prior to substantial development. I'd like to go over the proposed redevelopment itself. I'd like to focus in detail on my water quality design for the site, which we are essentially utilizing. It's a substantial improvement to what is out there now. There is no water quality design out there now. Essentially, everything runs off the site to the adjacent detention pond. I'm going to speak briefly about the development operation for Sunbelt and how they're going to work with the water quality design to improve the overall environmental discharge from the site. And I'm going to speak briefly about landscaping and screening. For those that are unaware, if it's possible, there is this used to be the 67 Payne Road used to be the former Frank Garden Center located off of Payne Road. If you can all see my cursor, Route 5 is Garland Turnpike is located to the east. Payne Road, the Mr. Sparkle Car Wash is located directly to the east. So this is the property itself. The orange box identified with the purple is essentially the property boundary for the site. I would like to briefly mention that there was a previous demolition permit that was pulled that removed, there was some existing impervious greenhouses and some other hardscape areas that have been removed. There were some storage material areas. And then I'd like to point out particularly there's some green space right here. That green space actually was former purchasable plantings and so on. So there were some specific trees on site. However, a large amount of this material identified here is not existing woodland, but is trees that, so in other words, in summary, the majority of the site had all been previously disturbed. This is, let me move my, there we go. This is an existing condition plan associated with the development. I would like to point out, I have spoken directly with Mr. Dixon and with Chris Zibidio, the town engineer. As part of some of the layout developments, it was identified that an A2 survey had not been formally submitted, so that was submitted recently, and I just wanted to clarify that. As far as the development is concerned, it's just over 3 acres in size, identified here by the purple line. The existing building that was originally proposed remains. It is 11,200 square feet. It's 1 story with no basement. There are 2 main access points off of the property from Payne Road, identified here to the west and then to the east. They will be maintained. There is approximately 35 parking spaces or more. They're not explicitly striped on this side, bituminous pavement. But the proposed developer, I should say the use, does not anticipate a need for maintaining all 35 spaces, so they will be reduced down to 15. But we are requesting to keep all of the existing pavement as shown. It will be utilized for equipment storage, similar to what is being currently used at the other Sunbelt location. In particular, especially as a result of the flagging for the wetlands, anything identified here in green has been flagged by Ms. Benno. So that is the existing flagged wetland as identified in green. You can see where it encroaches over top of a portion of our property. Anything identified in orange is the upland review area on site. There is a concrete lined water course that runs through a portion of this. It is flagged as a potential wetland just based on the plantings and some of the soils in that area, but it is a man-made feature. In addition to the detention pond that is located directly to the south. I would like to mention that the detention pond is flagged as a wetland, but it was originally designed as a stormwater detention pond for all of the Payne Road development area. It was designed to be able to accommodate a certain amount of impervious coverage for the entire Payne Road development. So the majority of the development does discharge, as evidenced by a lot of the drainage identified on the site. It runs down to this swale and then will ultimately discharge to the wetland pond, to the detention pond. And again, it was flagged as a wetland because due to its age, it's been there as long as it, since the 80s or whenever it was originally installed. Therefore, wetland plantings and so on have developed. And at the request of the commission, or I should say at the behest of the commission, Ms. Benno could speak a little bit about that if necessary.
Frank, can I just ask a question just for clarification for the commission? Can you just show them, it looks like you're doing that now, where the town wetland line is?
Yep, exactly. So the green line is the town identified upland review. So you can see the difference between the orange and the difference between the green. So that small white space in between there is the difference between what was flagged, and then the green is the upland review associated. Rather than identify the wetland because it was so close, I wanted to identify the upland review just to prove, or just to reiterate the fact that it was closely aligned. However, there is a slight deviation. It is actually a minor reduction in the wetland area on site as a result of the wetland flagging that was conducted. As far as erosion and sedimentation control, this is our ENS plan presented. So what we are showing on here is the yellow line identified here is the perimeter boundary control that will be installed, essentially a silt fence that wraps any of the downgrading areas associated with the development. Blue is the town standard construction entrances. They are up for interpretation as far as their location. We are planning on maintaining a large portion of this bituminous pavement as identified here in gray. So there will be some modification to their exact location, but they will be installed in accordance with the town standard requirement. The brown area down at the lower left-hand component of the site is a temporary sediment trap designed in accordance with the 2002 erosion control guidelines that will be able to accommodate any of the flows associated with the development. And flows for the entire area will be directed to that sediment trap via temporary diversion swales as identified here in blue. So essentially any flow that kind of runs along the upper portion of the site will encounter the diversion swale and be directed down around to the sediment trap to store any of it before being discharged to the main site discharge point. It was identified to me earlier that this discharge point is actually buried. When it was when the property was purchased, it had been buried as a result prior to the purchase of the property. And as part of this development, we will uncover that, clean everything up, and ensure that the catch basin will be utilized correctly. As far as the proposed redevelopment for the site, what is being, we are, as I had previously mentioned, we are maintaining all of the existing pavement identified in light gray on the western side. On the eastern side, we are adding a small amount of additional pavement in this area to allow access by a trailer truck. Basically, the trailer truck needs to swing down around into the rear of the property and then exit. So in order to ensure that that turning maneuver was capable of occurring, we had to add some additional pavement in this area. The darker portion of area shown directly behind the building is an additional 0.38 acres of bituminous pavement that is installed. 0.69 acres of pervious stone storage yard. Now, what is pervious stone storage? So it is not intended to be millings. Right now it is being identified as CONDOT number 67 stone, which is actually it is a type of stone that has larger stones and smaller stones that will lock together and basically bind it together. So it does not, similar to like a gravel driveway where it would rut, this type of stone will basically pack together easier and be easier to track on, but it will still maintain drainage, unlike where like a millings or something like that would melt over time and lock together and essentially become another type of pavement. This will maintain its drainage abilities while still maintaining adequate compaction to allow, equipment and other vehicles to drive over it, park over it. We have to maintain a direct access across with pavement in this area because of the truck turning. If this were to be all converted to a type of gravel, the truck would essentially destroy with one track through, which is why we've interconnected this. The green identified here is the landscape area and vegetated buffer. It's 0.5 acres. There is additional landscaping around the perimeter of the site, around the perimeter of the site. However, what I identified as part of our calculation, in addition to the water quality swale, which I will discuss a little bit more in the future, that is being identified here with the green, and the activity within the upland review area is being identified here in orange. So basically it's 0.6 acres. And I would just like to point out that a portion of that activity is located within the wetland, the water quality swale and in the landscaped portion area here. So the remainder of the site is outside of the upland review. There is a portion of the upland review area here that is within there's a portion of the proposed bituminous that is in the upland review here, but it is located in the former location of existing pavement. So it is essentially the surface condition is not changing from pre to post. Now, as far as the water quality design, to prove to you that this design is better than it previously was, the majority of the site is laid out grading wise exactly the same as it was. So essentially the high point of the site is where the building is located here, and it runs in this direction. This is elevation 66, 65, and down as you go towards the detention pond to the south. The existing addition basically ran this to the edge and then dropped off down to the pond, and there was no way to convey, or there was no way to direct any of this flow or treat any of this. So we are proposing the installation of a water quality swale along the entire rear portion of the property, about 25 to 30 feet in width. The blue lines here identify essentially those temporary diversion swales that I had mentioned in the erosion sedimentation control plan will be converted into permanent diversion swales that will essentially direct the flows to the water quality swale, where it will be stored and treated prior to discharge to the existing catch basin mentioned earlier. What is this design essentially going to look like? So as the flow enters the site and runs off the pervious area, the impervious area, and the pervious area towards the wetland swale, or I should say the water quality swale, as it encounters the swale, the black lines that you see identified here are they're stone check dams, and each check dam essentially will pause a portion of the water as it runs down the swale to allow some of the contaminant-laden sediment to drop out and essentially keep all of those contaminants in the site. So each one of those swales has a certain amount of volume. So each one of those check dams has a certain amount of volume associated with it. The total cumulative volume of the swale will treat the total water quality volume for the design. So essentially the 1 year storm, as it runs off of here, will run into the water quality swale and will be contained. The elevation of the outlet point for the main discharge point will be such that that water quality volume will be stored and prior to discharge. The design of the swale itself will be fully planted with various types of wetland vegetation, wetland vegetation, various types of vegetation that will survive in both wet and dry environments. It is specifically designed. BSC has in-house landscape architects as well as engineers, and they have a plant listing specifically designed for uptake of various types of contaminants. So nitrogen uptake, phosphorus uptake, heavy metal uptake, and so on. So the planting that will be placed throughout this wetland swale, water quality swale, will be such to basically absorb any of those contaminants and so on. This picture here essentially identifies what this could potentially look like upon completion of installation. In addition to the water quality, ensuring that all of the proposed portions of the site gets to the water quality swale prior to discharge, there is going to be the development operation for Sunbelt is going to be such to essentially place their equipment in a certain way. Obviously, their management plan will be so that various types of equipment are placed, particularly to benefit the environment in that. So these are some of the types of equipment that will be placed there. We have pumps, we have some generators. I was told that the majority of the equipment on site will not have hydraulic oil. Anything that does have any hydraulics will be placed on the pavement area outside of the upland review area. And then the other thing I'd like to reiterate is that these containment berms, in addition to renting the generators and the specialty pumps and so on, these containment berms are another feature that Sunbelt rents. They can be utilized, and they are designed for secondary containment in the event of a spill. So for example, any of the pumps or any of the generators that could be potentially placed within the upland review area could be contained with the secondary containment. They do have smaller tray options. So essentially it could be slid directly under the machine. So in the event of, drop something off, you slide the containment tray under the machine as a secondary means of protecting the discharge. I would also like to note, after some coordination with Chris and with Paul, that the developer has agreed to, in addition to the water quality swale, they will be installing catch basin snorkels, which are essentially their catch basin hoods that are like the final stage of protection in the event of any type of discharge. So if there's a discharge that isn't contained by the machines themselves, isn't contained by secondary containment, isn't contained by the water quality swale, if it were to overtop into the catch basin at the discharge point or in any of the existing catch basins on site, it would essentially stop any of that oil from entering the piping before discharging to the adjacent detention pond and wetland areas. As far as the landscaping and screening for the site, we are showing, as I had previously mentioned, landscaping throughout the water quality swale. There are additional screening trees that have been planted along the boundary adjacent to the detention pond. The only vista in this area would be if you were to be parking behind Stu Leonard's. You can look across the pond to see the equipment areas. So we placed these, there are maple trees, to basically screen that. We've spaced them such so that if in the event of any snow clearing or anything like that, the snow clearing can be placed in the swale to contain all of it and prevent it from discharging to any of the wetland areas. There is some additional street trees that we are proposing at the front, and then there are some additional arborvitae and other screening plantings that we are potentially showing in this location that had been removed, although we have been alerted that there have been some additional clearing in the adjacent areas. So the developer has already agreed that if there are any additional trees for screening requirements that need to be added, we can definitely do that along either the western or the eastern edge of the site. And then briefly about, Jen, if you're there, do you want to mention anything in particular about just some of your wetland review and just the functions and values of the existing wetland, just to kind of reiterate the point of the value of the wetland, if that's possible?
Sure, I could do that. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jen Benno with Soil Science and Environmental Services. I've been with the company since 1994. I just want to kind of clarify something. Scott Stevens, he's a registered professional soil scientist with our company. He did the wetland delineation in November of 2023. So I think if you look at our report, if you have it handy on page 3, there's a couple photos of the upland areas behind the building. And that would give you probably a good idea of what the site looks like, at least when I was there on November 3rd of this year. And the pictures basically show that the entire area behind the building was cleared. And you can see the vegetation on actually there's really dense vegetation on that side slope. So from the top of the bank down to the detention basin area, there's really dense vegetation. And you can see it on the aerial. Thank you.
Sure.
Scott did the wetland delineation, as I mentioned, November of 2022. His delineation report is under separate cover, also for that date, November 3rd, 2022. He delineated water course, perennial water course in the southeastern portion of the property, enters the site from the west. And I don't know, yeah, that's better. Yeah, we can go to that existing conditions plan sheet. And pretty much half of the upper section of that water course on site is lined with concrete. And then the rest of it, you can see where they had some previous stabilization measures that they attempted, including riprap and silt fence. But you can see obvious erosion along the water course. And that you can see also in the pictures on page 6 and 7, kind of gives you an idea what the perennial water course looks like. So along the detention basin, which is south of the site, there is a very narrow wetland fringe, which was delineated by Scott. And it has developed into like what they call a palustrine emergence, so like a shallow marsh kind of thing, which is dominated by a lot of Phragmites. There's also like a palustrine shrub or shrub swamp component to that. And that's pretty much about it. We did see several cans, bottles, things like that floating around in the water. Unfortunately, we saw some miscellaneous debris, most likely from the old Frank's utilization of the project, and that would be in the southeastern portion of the site, and probably a little bit off-site too. So the functions provided by the wetlands, their dominant functions include groundwater discharge, and it includes sedimentation and nutrient removal. And that's basically associated with your detention basin. And there is a slight wildlife habitat component because there is some wetland vegetation that's become established within the wetlands. Basically, these functions are very limited, and that's due to the surrounding development, and there are several invasive species. Like I mentioned, frag is out there along the edge of the detention basin. And essentially, really, you don't have any other connection or like a wildlife corridor to other habitats of value within that area because it's so heavily developed, as you can see by the surrounding development. So I think that's pretty much summarizes our report. If you have any questions, I'll answer.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jen. I just wanted to reiterate the fact that because it is an isolated wetland and the functions are it's a limited functioning wetland in this case. So as a result of that, it's essentially the presentation for this evening. Thank you very much. And again, we would like to reiterate that we would like to respectfully request the administrative approval of this moving forward. Hopefully we have satisfied all of the requirements associated with the regulation at this time. With regard to the multiple levels of containment for any potential types of spills or anything like that may happen, there will be spill kits on site. There will be, again, as previously mentioned, containment of the individual equipment, secondary containment, the water quality swales, and then the treatment measures at each individual catch basin. In addition to the fact that we have a limited functioning wetland, we would like to, again, request the administrative approval. Thank you very much.
Turn it over to my commissioners and see if there are any questions from the commission.
Commissioner Paskowitz,
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I don't really have a question, just a comment. This is one of the most thorough, comprehensive presentations that I've witnessed in the 11 years I've been here. Thank you very much.
Any other commissioners?
Chairman Zelik?
Commissioner Siddell?
Yes, I do have a few questions for the applicant. Can you go back to the map that you showed the site?
Sorry, Frank, it took you off early.
Did it kick me off? Okay. Should I, read?
Yeah, go ahead.
Share screen? Okay, got it.
Yeah, just reshare.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Commissioner, say that one more time. What was your question?
Yeah, can you go back to the site plan one more time?
Sure, absolutely.
I think I'm losing my video here, but I was reading through the literature, there's about a culvert that's on the site. Where is that exactly located?
Sure.
I'm losing
There
my
are-
video. If you're presenting, I'm not seeing it unfortunately, but
Can you see me or can you not?
I see you in the room, but I've lost my video again.
Can you see the presentation? Because I'll draw the culverts on unless you can, unless you can't see it.
New business. I've lost my video again.
Yeah, he's
just-
frozen on here.
Okay. Well, I can answer the question to the other commissioners if you would like me to do that.
Any other commissioners?
Since we have the audio, let's go ahead.
All right, so I can kind of talk it through. I'll also use my pen highlighter here to kind of identify. So there's an existing, I gotta find my pen, there it is. There is an existing culvert that's located to the western edge, I should say the eastern edge of the property that runs down in this direction, which connects into an existing catch basin when it continues to run south to a double catchment here. And then there is an additional water quality structure that's located directly to the south of that. That culvert runs down before connecting into the concrete lined water course that Ms. Benno had mentioned previously with regard to the wetland in this area. On the western edge, there is one catch basin at the southern edge of the existing parking lot that's currently there that will remain in place, and it will continue down before connecting into the main outlet point, which is essentially just a standard catch basin. It will just be graded around it, and then it discharges to the west. There is a drainage easement on 77 Payne Road where it runs to the west before discharging to the south into the stormwater detention pond. So both of these areas, we are not adjusting in our site plan design. We're not adjusting anything associated with the existing site drainage. We are just adding the water quality swale as a means to provide water quality treatment and to basically prevent any discharge directly off the site via sheet flow to either of the wetland areas.
So those culverts are still going to be there. That's what I'm getting at. That's still unchanged and still functional. I guess
That is
my
correct.
motivation. That's not changing.
Yes, that is correct.
There is construction. I'm moving on to another question. Right to the west there, there's that Splash USA, or somebody's moving in the adjacent property to the abutting property on the west. Is there any issue? I guess that sort of is in development. Any risk there that something that they do may impact your erosion control plan? Or because
Any of their development that is currently being constructed impact my erosion control plan? Is that the question?
correct.
No, I do not anticipate if I can jump back to the drainage plan here, or the grading plan. All of the grades associated, so the high point of the site is located at, let me switch to the laser pointer here. The high point of the site is located in the vicinity of the main building, so everything runs away from that. So I'm not anticipating that any of the design associated with 77 would encroach into this area and again, and onto our site. If anything did, following the installation of any of the sediment controls, they would essentially direct that flow over to the existing discharge point as it is, and again, into the drainage system. But as far as the controls for our site, I do not anticipate any of their construction affecting this.
Looks like he's dropped off again. Commissioner Sedil, so.
All right, while we wait for Commissioner Siddell to rejoin, any other commissioners, questions?
Just a preliminary, is Sunbelt still in operation on the Berlin Turnpike, or is that, it was here?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, because I haven't seen any, okay. So
I-
they're gonna move from that location to this one?
Go ahead. Answer the question. It was yes, they are. It was a representative from State Point, Mr. Sean DeBella, commented on that. Yes, they are still in operation.
Commissioner Conway?
Yes, I did have a question about the water course in the southeast corner here. Correct. You said,
Yes.
was that a natural water course at any time, or was that a man-made water course? I'm wondering how the concrete got there. Was it placed there? Was it something the former owner did there? Should it be removed or let it be? Just curious about how that all happened with the concrete.
Jen, if you have any comments on that, I can also respond as well.
I can't tell you anything about the history of that. Maybe town staff would have some record of when that occurred. I think that was placed there basically just to stabilize the soils because it's a highly erosive area, which you can see in the lower portion of the water course. As I mentioned, there are a couple pictures in there, and you can see that there's pretty severe erosion occurring, even though there's been some riprap placed there and some silt fence. So it's an ongoing issue. So I'm guessing they did it to stabilize that area. And the soil types associated with that are, I think Scott classified it as 109, which is like a eudifluvent. So it's something that's associated with water courses. And it could be well drained, could be moderately well drained, could be poorly drained. But in this case, I think it's pretty well drained. I didn't see any hydrophytic vegetation in the water course or anything like that. But to get back to the concrete, I can't answer the origin of that or the date it was placed there.
Okay, thank you. And do we think a lot more erosion could happen over there? Is that something that they need to be concerned about, or is that you think it'll be stabilized enough for the plans that they have in place?
What I can say is that the current layout of the site does have a portion of the drainage area discharging over the bank to the stream, or I should say the water course area. So we are redirecting that flow to the water quality swale. So therefore, there will be in total a less volume of water entering this area. Therefore, they should be able to handle any flows as a result of the proposed development. As far as the concrete line channel itself, it was not it was installed prior to the current owner owning the property, and typically with situations such as that, usually the harm has already been done. So it's almost, if you go in there to try to clean it up, it's almost let sleeping dogs lie type of situation almost. It's there. It probably is not going to benefit anyone to try to restore that back to its native condition. Again, it was originally, I should say not the water course, but the detention pond was installed as a detention pond for the area. And I think at the time it was installed, they just tried their best back then to prevent any further erosion, and it may not have been the best way to go about accomplishing it, but at this point, I think it would cause more harm than good to try to disturb what is already there.
Okay, thank you. No further questions from me.
I do have a question regarding the containment trays. Is that
Yes.
something that's required by law and regulated, or is that just a best management practice that you're going to be doing?
It is not required by law. It is something, I'll switch over to that area. It is not required by law. It is basically a good faith effort to provide additional containment measures. I would like to add one point here that, Sunbelt, the intent behind Sunbelt is, they want all of this equipment to be rented. This is a storage yard, but ideally in their eyes, they would love the yard to be empty because everything is currently being rented. But they will have on-site maintenance that will all be designed in accordance with the state with regard to maintenance cleanup for oils and so on and so forth. But it's the intent behind them, behind the maintenance associated with the development is that the equipment that is there is going to be in good running order. It is not going to be leaking. It is going to probably leave the site as soon as possible. It's basically intended to be transitory, but as a additional measure, the option to have the secondary containment in place is something that can be additionally deployed. So most of the machinery has, built-in containment within a lot of the equipment. A lot of the equipment uses fuel cells instead of regular gas tanks as another means of maintaining adequate secondary containment. We have the additional secondary containment that will be on site and can be deployed as necessary to ensure, especially if it's in the direct, within the upland review area or directly adjacent to that bank, even though we have the swales intended to direct everything to the water quality swale, it's just, why have it discharge if we can essentially contain it?
What I'm hearing is the trays are optional and can be deployed if needed, but they're not going to be in use all the time.
That is correct.
Any comments from staff regarding that?
No, I mean, it's a good faith effort on their end. I can't think of another application that's come before you that's even offered that in the past.
Okay. And then for staff also, the detention basin, would we agree that that was the original primary function of that water course area? And I just want to understand, this is not a named water course, correct?
Correct. This is not a named water course. It's from looking at the surrounding plans and the development process in the past, it appears that it was intended as a detention basin to capture a lot of this water from development. Some of it even comes off of the turnpike down Payne Road. A lot of it also comes from the car wash. That's why they have the easement that runs through their property. They're allowed an easement to discharge through the property to the west. So they've taken all that into consideration.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Any other comments from staff?
So, Mr. Chairman,
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Siddell?
Yes, please, if I may have the floor.
Yes.
Question, you had some trees in the foreground there, right where that photo was. There were some trees right in back of the building there. I assume those had been removed. They're not exactly in the upland review area, but there was a grove of trees right in front. That area is one of your earlier slides. You showed where that was.
Let me go back to the aerial view and I can identify. Were you referring to this area right here?
Yeah, that square. I assume that's no longer there.
That is no longer there. And to clarify a previous statement I made for the record, this is a component of what Frank's was using for some of their displays. A number of these trees were actually in pots and root balls. So if there was a point when the public wanted to purchase a tree, it could be removed from this area. There were some permanently planted trees, but a large number of those identified on this plan were essentially there, stored, and could leave the site.
Have you seen any erosion? Obviously it's past, but have you seen any erosion in that area? I assume you're going to have these new block type arrangement where the water can go through the blocks down into the ground. Is that my understanding?
I'm sorry, could you clarify your question?
So now that that is out of the way, what erosion have you seen in that area?
Any erosion would essentially follow the existing condition down in this direction, and ultimately under the design, it will all be collected with the water quality swale.
Mhm. Relative to the swale itself, how stable is the embankment there? That is extremely steep embankment there on the bottom there. Any danger there? We start digging there with a backhoe. If you show the plan where you had the swale, I
Yep.
mean, you're right up against the embankment there. You see, right, where you have your cascading dam there. How
Yep, I
stable is
understand.
that how stable is that embankment that you can go in there and dig out the swale, or maybe I've got the wrong idea?
No, what we designed this intentionally that we did not we did not basically dig anything down directly adjacent to the slope in this area. So I know it's kind of hard to tell. You could see where the grades kind of come across, but essentially what we're doing is we are not lifting any of the swale adjacent to this slope, and then any of the excavation that we are doing is essentially back. So this is I believe it's between a 3 to 1 or in the 4 to 1 slope. So the ultimate depression portion of the swale is actually located a good probably 12 to 15 feet back from that existing slope. The elevation difference between the bottom of the swale and the actual up top part here is only about 2.5 to 3 feet. So in total, the maximum height adjacent to this is only going to be about 3.5 feet. It's only going to be about 2 feet over at the top portion of the swale. So the majority of the slopes is occurring beneath the entire swale design itself. So therefore, we are not anticipating that there is going to be a volume of water in here that could ultimately overtop and discharge down this slope and erode the slope away. The slope is currently stabilized with existing vegetation. It may not be ideal vegetation. I'm presuming that there is a certain amount of invasives and stuff in this area, and Ms. Benno could probably speak to that, but it would not be our recommendation to disturb any of this area because it would require us to any of the existing slope, because it will substantially destabilize the area as it is and would be extensive for us to maintain erosion control and slope stability after that was produced, which is after that was affected, which is why we made sure to keep as much of our design beyond the limits of the top of that slope.
What would be the velocity of the water, like the storm we just had over the weekend, Sunday, Monday? What would be the velocity of the water going through there?
The benefit of these, the check dams, are any of those velocities will essentially be checked by any so as flow basically comes down through here and enters the water quality swale, any velocity it might pick up will essentially get halted by those water quality check dams. So those check dams are going to be anywhere from 18 inches to 2 feet in height with stone. Therefore, anything that enters there you would have to accumulate up the amount of volume to the top of that before it begins to overtop. And as soon as it begins to overtop, it's starting to accumulate into the next check dam down. So each one begins to fill up. And once you get the entire area essentially full of stormwater, it would run down and start overtopping into the existing catch basin. But at that point, is essentially functioning as a small pond, and therefore any velocity that would have been achieved by running down this slope would essentially just stop as it enters the pond at the ponded area itself. Once all of the flow has entered the catch basin and exited, essentially this would function as a pond, but it would ultimately slowly seep down. We have a perforated pipe that is located beneath the grade here. It's probably about 10 inches below grade. So anything that is existing inside the pond would ultimately infiltrate down into that pipe and again, connect in and discharge. So there will not be a situation where this would remain with water in it and potentially be a nuisance with mosquitoes and so on. That will drain over a, probably a 24 to 48 hour period.
Thank you. I do have a question for Ms. Benno. It appears from the plan that those 6 trees are going to be sitting in the swale. Is that correct? They're going to be tough to take root in that swale area, right?
I cannot answer that question. I didn't devise that plan and I haven't really reviewed the plan, so.
I can answer that. So those trees, as they're shown right here, they're on the very edge of the slope for that. There's going to be a small vegetated filter strip about 2 feet wide. The orientation of them might be hard to read based on the location of my green icon that I put in there. But yeah, those would be located directly on the top of that bank. They would be installed, and during the installation process, there will be some stabilization required during the planting stage of the water quality swale, and there would be some jute matting or other types of erosion control measures that can be installed and would be intended to be left there and ultimately degrade over time and actually be used to further support the additional vegetation, the additional seed bed areas. So those would be installed adjacent to those trees to basically armor the slope. But the trees themselves, actually, once they begin to take root, they're one of the most optimal ways of holding that slope together with all of the root ball and all of the roots that come out of the trees.
I know, Ms. Benno, one of your favorite conditions is the 3-year plan that there must be take root for 3 years. In case there's, not every tree is the same, but you envision having that same condition on the permit?
That's something that we typically do recommend on our projects that we've worked on in the town and other towns. And that's basically a good opportunity to make sure that the area is functioning properly. So that would be up to you.
Well, actually, it's up to the applicant. Are they open to something like that? It's a pretty good condition that you have to take root within 3 years. Otherwise, the planting has to be replaced.
If I could just clarify your question, Commissioner, there's a stipulation that there is a 3-year time frame to ensure that the vegetation has taken root. Do I understand your question correctly?
Yes, sir.
I can also send you some draft language of what we've used before, just so you can review it. So typically it's an inspection, and as long as a certain percentage are still viable, you're fine. Otherwise, you replace in kind.
Understood.
Has the trees been and the vegetation been picked out yet? Have you made especially for the trees, have you made a selection?
We have a selection of the type of plantings that we would be specifying within the swale. I apologize, I don't have the information directly available in the presentation. Let me see one moment if I can pull up the planting plan.
What I'm getting at, sir, is I like trees that are not prone to storm damage. People put plantings in, and you have a storm like we had this past day, and they get wiped out. I mean, with snow. That's just my motivation to my question is, yes, it has to take root, and it is better for storm tolerance, because some trees we plant, I mean, they got, down the street here, it just get taken apart with each storm because there's almost nothing left anymore. So that's my motivation. If you pick something that's tolerant to storm, the branches don't come down when it gets up in size. That's just my motivation for my question, because sometimes even after 3 years, when the tree gets big, it tends to be prone to storm damage, and it can lose significant amount of limbs.
I can tell you that the trees that are on the lower half, the southern half of the site, are red maple trees, and I believe they're red maple trees. And then the trees on the street trees are coffee trees, which are smaller, more street street familiar types of trees. There are arborvitae proposed, and then the majority of the other plantings are all low shrub type shrub type plantings, which are more intended to be utilized for water quality treatment as opposed to
Understood.
larger vegetation.
Understood. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? I'd like to thank the commissioners for their very thoughtful and thorough questions. And I'd like to get a sense.
I believe.
Mr. Chairman, I do have some site photos that I took today with the town engineer. I don't know if you'd like me to kind of share them. It might give you a kind of concept of the space as well, too. Sure. So let me share. So what I have up on the screen for you, this is similar to the aerial that was provided, but this was not during kind of a leaf out condition. The area that was kind of discussed before for the plantings, you can see that there are gravel paths going through it as kind of the display area. You can see kind of where all the bins were laid out previously on site. In August is when the applicant moved out. You can see when those were kind of removed from the site, just kind of give you an idea of the space. This building, which is outside of the upland review area, was removed via building permit. So just to give you a concept of the space, this is coming in on the western side, northwestern side, looking into the site. You can see the existing paved area, the area where the building was removed, and in the center of the site. This is actually from the back of the site looking forward. Again, that's kind of that existing gravel that kind of went back to those storage bin areas. The storage bin areas would have been in front of you. So the wetland that was, or I should say the drainage channel that was discussed, this is kind of a picture for your reference, kind of as it winds around and then comes around the property. You can see the existing fence in front of you. That was kind of the edge of development on the property. You can see a little bit here. It might be a little difficult to see on the screen, but you can see the concrete that's lining the channel. This is the back of the property. You can see kind of the undisturbed area of the existing grass. These posts right here would have indicated the back of the bin areas that were there. So you can see those are kind of left in place, but that would have been the backstop for those bins. And you can see kind of the existing tree and shrub line. So this is the flat area and where it drops off. I don't have a picture right on the edge, but it drops off just after. And this is the applicant, is not planning on moving past, as they indicated, the flat area of the property, the level area, and not having excavation on the bank. Again, looking at the back of the site, the slope is to your right. You can see kind of the, some existing pots and things that were left over there from the past nursery use. And again, there is a existing wood curb that was at the back of the site that was existing for the kind of the show area where they had the plantings, and kind of really delineates again where they had stopped previously as part of the development of the property. You can notice the area was cleaned out some, and there was work done. This is kind of that area in the back where that catch basin is. It currently, and as Mr. Vaca noted, it is currently buried. You can see we actually found a couple pallets of stone that were left over from the Frink's use in that area, and may very well be under one of those pallets of stone. That is something we're going to be asking the applicant to take a look at, regardless of the application, to evaluate, clean out, and look at the existing drainage system, and also look at adding erosion controls into the areas restabilized. This is looking from that area north. And there's also a catch basin that would be in this area of the property that we couldn't identify out there with me and the town engineer. Again, an area to be cleaned out and reviewed. It would be done, of course, as part of this application, but we're going to work with the applicant and the property owner. So again, there was some work done noted in between the two. When you look at it, the two different aerials, pretty much within most of the disturbed area, but there was a lot of cleaning up and bins removed and a little bit of work done on site. So I just kind of wanted to give you kind of a layout of the property, and we will be working with the property owner regarding kind of some cleanup on site and with the catch basins and any erosion controls.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I'd like to ask the commissioners their feelings on whether or not a public hearing is necessary for this application. And get a consensus from the commissioners, please.
Commissioner Pasquich here.
Commissioner Paskowitz.
I see the abutters are listed in your packet here. So they've all been contacted regarding this.
Yes, they have. They are aware of the photos and they are aware that we've been out there.
Then I'm satisfied. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Conway.
Yes, I guess my question would be if there are no neighbors that are residential, I guess I would be more inclined to forego the public hearing. Is that something that is more common in a residential area where there, are neighbors that are not businesses?
It's regardless, whether it's commercial or residential, it's more in the public interest. And also based on the impact, in this situation, it appears as though it's just a redevelopment of an existing disturbed area. My opinion is a public hearing is not warranted, but I do want to hear from the other commissioners.
Chairman Zellick,
Commissioner Sadell.
yeah, I'm with you. I think, given the nature of the area, a very private commercial, I would be inclined to waive the public hearing.
Very good. Commissioner Wimett.
I waive the public hearing.
Okay. In that case, can I get a motion that a public hearing is not necessary?
So moved.
Well, if you
Do I have to
could,
actually say that?
yeah, if you could read the motion. There's a section here that's already been drafted for the public
Maybe.
hearing being necessary.
The motion is for no public hearing. This activity will have no significant impact in the regulated area and will not require a public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, he should read the application information above, so we're clear on what one we're talking about, please.
Okay, it's for application 2023-16
Yes,
for
please.
drainage improvements, grading and pavement within the upland review area at 67 Payne Road. Applicant is BSC Group Incorporated. The owner is State Point Properties. The contact is Frank Baca. The motion is for no public hearing. It is the opinion of the commission that it will have no significant impact on the regulated area and will not require a public hearing.
Very good. Can I get a second?
Second, Commissioner Pasquich.
All right. If we can do a vote on the motion. Any further discussion before we go to vote? All right, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next, with this particular application, the applicant has requested that this goes to administrative approval. How does the commission feel about forwarding this over to Eric for approval rather than the commission looking into this any further?
Commissioner Pasquich, I have no further question. I feel it's comprehensive enough for me to follow through with the administrative approval process.
Good. Commissioner Sadell?
As long as we forward what the exact conditions are, those are read. I'm inclined to project this size. It's still in motion. I would like to make sure that all the conditions are made known to the commission. That's just my feeling, Chairman Zellick.
Would you be comfortable if those conditions were communicated to us by staff prior to his approval? And I'll
Yes.
work with staff.
Yes, sir.
All right. Commissioner Conway?
I'm comfortable with that as well.
All right, Commissioner Winet.
I'm comfortable with it the way it is.
Very good. In that case, can you make a motion then for
Mr.
the
Chairman,
application?
I believe the planner has a
Yeah.
comment.
So, Mr. Chairman, the one thing that I would advise is just kind of a point of order. As far as kind of communicating conditions, once it's kind of handed over to administrative, there shouldn't really be a meeting outside of a meeting that kind of discusses those conditions. Typically, what we would do as far as staff would go, we would report those conditions as far as an approval. Agent approvals then get published, and if there is an issue with the agent approval, it can be brought back to the commission. That would be under an appeal type of scenario. But if there are specific conditions, we would be looking staff to institute, such as Commissioner Sadiel noted, the 3-year requirement. That would be appropriate to discuss with staff now, so we can incorporate those rather than creating a potential meeting outside of a meeting would be my concern with communicating those.
So Commissioner Sadiel, would you be agreeable to allowing the condition to be discussed right now and given to Eric?
Yes, is the applicant open to that condition as discussed earlier?
Clarify, this is the 3-year tree, making
Yeah.
sure that the trees are viable.
Yes. Yes,
Yes,
sir.
the developer agrees to that.
Okay.
Right.
So,
Very good.
Mr. Chairman Zelik, do we want to know what the exact language is? Are we going to approve this right now? Or will we let staff take an IOU on that? I think they understand what I'm asking for. That's all.
Yeah, I believe they do.
Yeah, we have language from other ones that Ms. Beno has worked on, and I can draft the same language. It would be the 10 standard conditions at the minimum, plus that one and any other ones that I deem necessary.
Okay.
All right, very good. Can I get a motion then that we act on this by turning it over to staff for administrative approval?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we turn this over to staff for their approval
And
and read the entire thing.
well, read the application number and then the motion is proposed. It's not drafted here, so you just have to read. the
Okay, so it's application 2023-16 for drain improvements, grading and pavement within the upland review area. If we return the administration of this over to staff.
Very good. Can I get a second?
I second that.
Second from Commissioner Conway. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. All right.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen of the commission.
Okay, moving on to the next item under new business. B is application 2023-17 for sanitary sewer easement, vegetation maintenance within the MDC easement in the town of Newington. Applicant, the MDC, owners various. Contact Susan McGrelly.
While Eric, is this on? Yeah. While Eric brings up the presentation, Susan's not here right now, but he's a Waterbury System Manager of Engineering, and then Tom Robbins is the PM for the district on this project. You have the presentation file?
Yes, this is what they sent me.
Are you in the Zoom? Let me in the Zoom folder.
What they sent. Sent to me.
You're both with MDC in front of them. That's the PowerPoint. That's the
Oh,
PDF.
okay, sorry.
Eric, we know. We also have Darren Gibson, who's our construction manager for this project.
you go.
Do you want to go through the slideshow portion of it? I think you're still in edit mode here.
No, I think we're good.
Wait,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Jason introduced all of us. This is part of our the MDC's vegetation management program for all of our sewers. And overall, the big picture here is the district, as everyone is aware, has a large number of sewers in our area, including town of Newington. And I guess we can go on to everything. That's a good summary slide right there. Within the town of Newington, the district has a total of approximately 130 miles of sanitary sewers. Most of that is, within the roads, within the right of ways and the roadways and so forth. But something like 34 miles of it is in easements, which can be in town property or private property or stuff like that. The state has actually required us to inspect all of our sewers. So the stuff that's in the roads is easy to do. The stuff that's in the easements that are in parking lots and so forth are easy to do. But the easements that are back in the woods are not easy to do. In fact, since they were installed back in the 60s and 70s, they've been growing vegetation now for the last 50 or 60 years.
Oh.
And kind of hard to get to, means we can't inspect them. We can't look at we have no idea what their condition is. So part of our, we actually had a consent decree where we're actually required to do inspection and everything else. So we identified 21 miles of sewers in the town of Newington that will require to be cleared so that we can get to them. Of that 21 miles, we've identified that almost 4.8 miles of it is within wetlands and 6.1 miles are in the upland review area. Like I said, these pipes were installed back in the 60s and 70s, for the most part, a large portion of them. PVC concrete, some of them have already been lined. On to the next slide there, the driver for it is our consent decree, which came from Connecticut Deep and EPA, requiring us to, among other things, set up a CMOM program and ultimately to find out what's going on with our sewers and eliminate the infiltration that is water seeping into the sewers, which is extra water to treat, which leads to overflows, and an inflow, which comes in from either manhole covers that are cracked, missing, not in place, need to be reset and stuff like that. So the typical kinds of things we do as part of a CMOM program is inspect the sewers. Now, to inspect the sewers, we need to be able to get to the sewers. And that's the problem with a lot of these sewers that are in easements in these easement areas that need to be cleared, and which obviously includes wetlands and the upland review area also. So we intend to inspect the sewers via CCTV, closed circuit TV. We send cameras down the sewers. We inspect the manholes visually. Ultimately, we will clean the sewers. And a lot of times we do what we call cured in place pipelining, which allows us to put a new sewer within the sewer, which is the desired thing. That way we don't have to go out there and do an extensive construction project like was done when these were first put in the first place. We'd like to avoid that. To date, we've inspected approximately 92% of all of our sewers throughout our entire system. And what's left is these cross-country ones, which is what's driving us to come to the town of Newington. And if you see this next slide there, we've actually been doing this throughout the district. We have done work in Bloomfield, East Hartford, Rocky Hill, and most lately Windsor, and I've now moved to Newington to get our easements cleared out and everything else so we can do this inspection work. The next slide there kind of shows what this looks like. So one thing to emphasize is this is not big machinery coming through. We've got a contractor, Lavoie Horticulture, who I think may be on the Zoom or the Zoom call. And they do this work primarily with hand tools. So they've got very good program where they come in and actually on the next slide there, it talks about the actual, well, 2 slides later, it talks about the actual procedure where, well, I'll go through that later, but basically you can see the work that they do there, that you end up with ideally guys going through, the crew going through there with hand tools, and you end up with ideally like a natural looking, I won't say lawn because a lot of these are back in the woods and everything, but a natural area that you could walk through, or, you know, we could get our inspection equipment through there. And in fact, this kind of thing even creates like wildlife corridors too. The CCTV thing we do, we purchased a vehicle that allows us to go through the easements instead of some of the larger equipment that's often used, which requires the full 20-foot wide easement. This cross-country vehicle only requires us to clear like 12 to 15 feet wide. So we're not even clearing as far as our easement is. And this allows us to get cameras in there. This is enough to get a camera in there in these cross-country areas.
And you wanted to clarify, I see it's on the slide, but how typically wide your easements are?
The easements are typically 20 feet wide. Yes.
The commission understands it, yeah.
Chairman
Next
Zellick,
slide
if I have a
there.
question, Chairman Zellick, if I may ask the applicant.
Commissioner, I'd prefer that we hold our questions until the applicant is done with his presentation. And then we can come back to questions. You continue, please.
Okay. The next slide there shows an example map area. As part of our application, we have maps of all of the easement clearing areas, and they show all of the wetlands and the upland review area for all the areas in which we're doing this clearing. So this, and one thing to emphasize here is this looks like we are going, you know, through this wetland area here and everything else, but one thing to emphasize is that we're only talking 12 to 15 feet wide within this. So it's a pretty minimal impact. And again, you know, we're doing this where there is already an existing sewer. And some of the things we talked about in our application is the fact that we're not doing any grading. We are basically just clearing, and within the wetlands and the upland review area, we're not even removing the stumps.
And also you're not constructing any roads, correct?
Correct. There's no roads being constructed either.
It's not a logging operation.
Right. And the whole emphasis here has been as little impact as possible, especially in the wetlands and the upland review area. The next slide here shows our typical sequence. We've been very big on sending out notifications to property owners and the abutters. And the next slide shows an example of letters that we have been sending out. We've been doing this throughout the entire project. We typically send the letters out, you know, weeks or month or so before we get into a given area. And then right before we get to an area, we have door hangers we put out to give the, you know, resident owners and everything else a heads up that something is happening. In addition to the notifications we did via letters and everything, we've also been trying to get the word out as much as possible to the town. We already did a presentation to the town council. And I believe there was, did you folks get some stuff on the website as well?
I believe they might have put a notification out on it, kind of one of the news flashes.
Okay.
It was September.
I believe it was.
Right, so, so we did do a presentation to the town council already. We have letters going out. We have door hangers. Before we even go out into a given area or whatever. So the first thing we do is we get a surveyor out there to go ahead and basically find the manholes with GPS, which can be an issue sometimes in some of these wooded areas. Our contractor scopes out the area, looks at these maps that are that I talked about, and comes up with a plan on how they're going to go ahead and do the work within a given map. Most of that is how they're going to access it, because you can't always just go down the easement, especially if it's going through a wet area or whatever. So sometimes he has to make arrangements to get access other ways. But access locations, he, summarizes the kind of properties, any stream crossings, any unique features, any large trees, which are actually, we pay for those separately, how long it's gonna take him. I talked about the door hangers. And then the contractor gets out there, hand cutting, some small equipment for chipping and grinding. They do flush cutting of stumps and then follow it up with seeding with an appropriate mix, whether depending on what kind of area it's in. And then lastly is a selective herbicide for invasive plant species, which is important because if you don't do that, then you get a lot of invasive stuff that springs up very, very quickly. And this is very commonly done in this type of work too. And Mark could talk more about that, but they have different applications they can do in the wetlands areas, the upland review areas, and then the typical cross-country areas that are none of the above. And then the last slide there just shows a couple of example letters that we have been sending out and a door hanger.
And correct me if I'm wrong, you've already started the process in non-wetland areas of clearing the easements.
Right, so following our presentation to the town council, we did actually start work in the town, and our contractor has been, he's been diligently avoiding the wetland areas and the upland review areas.
The one thing, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The one thing I'll add is we've been doing this program since 2020. Like Tom said, we started in other towns. And I could probably count on one, maybe two hands, the number of complaints we've had. Which is amazing. I mean, it's a credit to our staff and our contractor, given a lot of these areas that the community doesn't even know there's a sewer there.
Right.
So we've had very minimal complaints. It's the outreach, it's the staff, it's the inspection staff themselves. So just wanted to add that.
A couple other things I'll add to. Any work that's identified from this will be a separate project. If we have to get in there and have to do point repair or lining or anything else, we would, if that were in a wetland area, we would be coming back to the commission to get permission for that project. So what this permission for here is only for this initial clearing, so that we can get in there and do the CCTV inspection to find out what we're dealing with here.
Right, well, you may or may not have to do going forward.
It allows us to prioritize, basically.
Right. Absolutely, I mean, this is critical for us to do. I can't emphasize how important this is. I know it's one of the things you folks have to consider. If we do nothing, then these sewers will continue to age and they will start failing.
And actually, one of the initial alternatives before we started the clearing program was actually building roads. We looked at a program to build access roads to get in there with traditional equipment that you would see on the street. It was cost prohibitive. We knew the permitting would be very challenging. So that's why we purchased the UTV and went down the road of the route of low impact clearing to allow us to inspect.
And it's important to note that these are pre-existing sewers. It's understandable that they are where they are. A lot of these are interceptor sewers, which collect large volumes of flow. The system is set up to be a gravity system, and water flows downhill, and just like the rivers and streams flow downhill, so do the sewers. And so
we have a few trunk lines through Newington as well, I believe.
Newington trunk is a big area for us. I guess, at this point in time, if the commission has any questions or covering certain aspects.
Okay, I'll turn it over to the commissioners if they have any questions for the applicant. Commissioner Sadell, I'll let you speak now.
Thank you. I want to be clear on something. This inspection, this is an above ground sonic inspection that you're doing on these pipes.
Well, the equipment is above ground, but we're using CCTV cameras that go into the sewers.
Okay, you put it in one end and it comes out, back and forth. Gotcha.
Yes, it's got basically it's robotic.
A robotic camera, yes.
And they usually
Go ahead.
Sorry. I was just say, usually they go manhole to manhole on those if they can.
Now, you do this inspection. Is this the first time we've done this since the 60s? This is the first inspection?
With the exception of the sewers that were lined,
Yeah.
most of them have not been inspected. There are some that I'm sure might have been inspected years and years ago, but within any recency, no, they have not been inspected. The one thing
So-
that does, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, the one thing that is good to note and why Newington wasn't done first early on in the program is the majority of cross-country sewers are PVC and RC, or concrete and PVC, as opposed to some other towns where they have a lot of clay sewers that are cross-country. Those would be a higher priority and of more concern than RC pipe or PVC.
Now, how often would this be done? We do it this year, you're gonna have to do it 30 years from now? And have to
Well,
do
the
it
cl-
again?
The clearing is going to be, the goal of the clearing is basically to clear, seed, spray herbicide. That could be a cycle of 1 to 3 years, depending on the area, just allow the grass that we're seeding to establish itself and choke out the invasives. It is a low maintenance, low growth grass. As far as that's, so basically once that happens, then I would envision the easements would get cut once a year. And we're developing an easement maintenance program to go down that path. Now, as far as the CCTV inspections, in most cases, it's a once every 5 to 10 years. However, if we notice a defect, we will increase that inspection frequency until the pipe is actually rehabilitated.
Okay, so you ever have a contractor come in who's gonna be doing this making you need a path here, not a road, but you're gonna build a path, correct? Over this pipe. Or pipes.
We're clearing our existing easement over the pipe, and the inspection itself would be done by district personnel.
Sure. But relative to the clearing itself, what are the best guidelines that those people have? What happens if there's a gray area, cut or not to cut? How is that decision made?
Well, we mark out the center line of the sewer, and we try to maintain a 12 to 15 foot width. It can vary a little bit depending on if there's a big tree on the side, we'll try to go around it and not take it down. But that's a field inspection decision. But the guidance that we've given our field staff is we want 12 to 15 feet wide. We don't want to go wider than that, and obviously the contractor doesn't want to go wider if he doesn't have to.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Pasquich, you have a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Speaking to the piping cross-country, are there sections of the piping that are, some are concrete and some are PVC? Are there any portions of this continuity where there's concrete that's blended in or connected with PVC in the past?
Most likely, sorry, continue.
Go ahead, most likely what?
Most likely not. Your material transitions would be at the manhole unless there was a previous repair, and I'm not sure. There'd probably be a lot of previous repairs in these areas. So your material transitions would be at the manholes, and a lot of these, with the exception of maybe the trunk sewer itself, were done as part of development over time. So you would have a development would be consistent with material for all the work that was done in the development.
So in your mapping from the past and history, you know where the concrete lines are and where the PVC lines are,
Yes.
correct? So
Yes.
where the concrete lines are, from past experience, concrete I know deteriorates or can crack over time due to changes in the soils. Say we've got a clay area and the soil's expansive, and it can move a pipe joint and also crack it. So during this CCTV photography, you're also looking for possibilities of cracks where there's leaks, correct?
Yes, we're looking for, any defects in the pipe or even maintenance issues in the pipe. Maintenance issues could be like a root wall. Defects would be like an offset pipe joint, a crack, a hole. There's an industry standard called NASCO that our CCTV operators are certified by. And that there's a standard system for scoring all these types of defects, and the score kind of dictates how soon that pipe needs to be addressed.
So let's say in the event there's a connection that's broken, significant enough where the pipe may have to be replaced. If that occurs, you have to come in with machinery now and dig that trench out and replace the pipe. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, if that were to happen, obviously, if it was a true emergency, would notify the town and work with town staff to let them know that we're that we have to do the work. One of the goals and objectives of this is to TV it before it gets to that point. And while the pipe is still lineable, like Tom mentioned, the cured in place pipe, we have started a lining program in our easement sewers. We started in Bloomfield with a contract last year. It's been going pretty well. It was a little bit of a learning experience for I think everyone involved, but even when we TV'd the easement sewers that we've TV'd to date, I'm not aware of any that have to be dug and can't be lined.
So what I'm hearing is the lining itself is significant enough in its fabrication and its composition to be an area where you have a pipe that's got a concrete pipe that has a problem with leakage. The lining can pass through that immediate area and continue to conduct itself as a positive moment of connectivity.
Yes, the lining basically becomes a seamless PVC pipe. The only issues that we ever have with lining is if you have a severe hole or void or a collapsed pipe or like significant offset sewer, or it's starting to like deform and not have its circular shape. Those are the areas that or where you can't line, but obviously we're doing a lot. We do a lot of lining work, probably 10 to 20 miles of lining work a year, district wide. And I would say it's well over 90% or 95% probably where you don't have to do any dig work.
I know you're kind of, you're aware and you're doing the best you have. I just have these questions because I'm not aware of it. So thank you very much for expanding on my question. Thank you.
You're welcome, Commissioner.
Any other commissioners?
So as a resident, you're just going to see a little path about 12 feet wide that's going to get mowed every 3 years?
Probably once a year, most likely.
Oh, so somebody will come by once a year. Okay. And that's pretty much going to be effective at all. And so, like, actually, I'm on page 30. And so they're going to. No. No, but there's a swamp down at the end of my street, and there'll be a path about 12 feet wide, and that'll be it.
Yes. And we have, I can't say this happens all the time, but we are trying to coordinate with our operations crews and actually do outreach and notifications in advance of the TV work too.
Mhm.
So the goal is that if people see someone walking through the woods, they know ahead of time why that person's there.
I'd like to ask the applicants, have you done this in other towns?
Yes.
And do those other towns typically have a public hearing so that the public is made aware and they have a chance to weigh in, or is it more through your outreach program?
So one of the things that we found in the process is not every town is consistent with regards to wetlands.
Mhm.
Some towns don't even require a wetlands application. We have not been required to do a wetlands public hearing at all. But what we've done, I think that's probably prevented, well, not really prevented, but what's negated that or offset that is a better word, is the town council meetings. We've done that in every town. And that's been the opportunity for the district to talk to council and have the public the opportunity to know that it's coming.
Typically at those meetings, the public isn't really allowed to engage in the discussion.
I mean, we were on the agenda for the September meeting, and I don't think we had any comments.
They call it a public information meeting.
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, if I may too, I can actually share that at least 3 residents have come in after that public meeting session that I brought out the maps, showed it to them, gave them a copy of it, where it was going in their neighborhood, whether it was in their yard. So people did come in and talk to me.
Okay. How is staff's feeling as far as a public hearing being required for this? Because I want to err on the side of the public. I want to make sure that they're fully informed and there's no surprises.
I understand your concern, and that's really up to the commission. You know, I will point out, you know, these are MDC easements with their infrastructure. They do have a right to maintain them. They are here just because of the wetland aspect, because they will be going through some wetland areas as well as buffer areas.
And they are working directly with the residents that.
Right, they will be handling notifications to the residents, as they stated. They have already started work in town. I have not heard any feedback one way or the other.
It is a more unique type of application in that they are providing notice to those directly affected and abutters. So I'm sure you've had a lot of mailings associated with this. How many?
20. The residents that's called and asked about the project.
Yeah, but on top of that, you've probably sent out hundreds and hundreds of letters.
Okay, so this has already gone in front of the council, and I do see some liaison members here this evening. Any concerns from the council liaisons? You know, would you like to see a public hearing for this, or do you feel as though the outreach program that's already occurred is sufficient?
The presentation was very well received. We were all questions. But I think we did ask about, in the event that yes, there's patients and whatever, we did ask that information be put on the town website. That was additional thing. So, the consequences of not doing it in the public would be more upset if the sewer starts overflowing or whatever. And if this is necessary work. And it seems communication that NBC is doing all they can to be cognizant of the wetlands, of the not clear cutting. And I have not heard the information is out there. Is aware of it. And it wasn't the same presentation such time that you received from at the town council and
I can't hear you very well.
And or coming to you to see to get additional information that the information is out there. And I'm impressed with not only the mailings, but also everything seems to be in place to let residents know what's happening, and an opportunity to respond if they need to or ask any questions. Nothing has come back to me. Again, I agree. I don't feel that a public hearing is necessary in the situation. I think you cross your T's and dotted your I's and make every effort to let the public know what's going on.
Since the council members, the liaisons were off mic, I'm just going to quickly summarize. So the council has already seen the presentation.
Yes.
They are posting information on the town website regarding the project. Okay, you've asked that be done. We feel as though the MDC's presentation has been thorough, and the council is comfortable not having a public hearing regarding this. And maps are available at the town planner's office.
Yes, we have the copies available.
And I do believe, that all the councilors were engaged. There was a public meeting.
Okay, so it was a public meeting.
There were, I think, there was more than sufficient opportunity for us to ask questions, for the discussion throughout the course of the presentations.
Okay, so the public had sufficient opportunity to interact at that meeting with the town council.
That's my.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners, questions? Any other comments from staff?
No, I don't. You have any comments?
All right, then I'd like to entertain a motion from the commission that a public hearing is not necessary, but I'd like to get a consensus from the commissioners whether or not they feel a public hearing is needed.
I'm comfortable that the public hearing is not needed. Commissioner Pasquich speaking.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Sadell?
I'm likewise on there. This is necessary work. And I'm comfortable with the MDC has done to this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Conway?
I'm in total agreement.
Thank you. Commissioner Wimett?
I'm in agreement too.
Okay, likewise. Therefore, can I get a motion that public hearing is not needed for this application?
Read that, okay. For application 2023-17 for sanitary sewer easement vegetation maintenance within MDC easements in the town of Newington, the applicant, of course, is the MDC. Contact is Susan Negrelli, and the motion would be that that we have no public hearing to this, since it's probably not going to have much of an impact on the public at all. They probably won't even notice.
Can I get a second on the motion?
Second, Commissioner Pasquich.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further discussion? And seeing none, all in favor?
I,
Aye.
Good, motion passes. So we'll put this on the agenda for the next meeting.
Until the next meeting,
and
we can
we'll
take
act
final
on it at the next meeting. If there are no further concerns or any petitions from the public for a public hearing. Okay, moving on to old business. I see none. Next item is public participation on non-agenda items. Any member of the public wishing to speak, please come forward.
Hey, could I ask so minor question? Was this surveillance done just from?
Okay, I'm sorry. We close the
Okay,
discussion on this one for now.
I was just wondering how it was done.
All right, any member of the public wishing to speak?
Online, Mr. Chairman?
Seeing none, I'll move on to communications reports, and the first one is agent communications.
I did one agent approval last month. This was basically for a redefinition of a detention pond on the HO Penn site at 225 Richard Street. So they kind of redefined it, regraded it. They're going to be adding some planting and improving the water quality of that swale significantly, I believe, with their plan. So
Anything else?
it'd be done in the spring. They've started some construction now.
Any other projects?
No other agent approvals at the last month. So
Any other communications?
town council is up next if they choose to speak.
All right, we'll move on to town council liaison communications.
Would you like us to?
Sure, if you would, please.
We got the big room.
People. Good evening. Glad to be here.
again. Both of us served last term. We're serving again as liaisons. First of all, I just want to say thank you to the commissioners who are here and who are on Zoom, who have taken this on again to continue to work for the commission. And thank you for taking on the chairpersonship, Commissioner Zelik. One comment that I just spoke with Councilor Budrako about this. One thing that I think might be helpful at the end of the inspection process for MDC, and we can figure out how to, maybe Eric or Paul, you could contact them, that I think it would be helpful not only for the council, but probably for the Conservation Commission, is to have them come back and give a follow-up report after they've completed the rest of the inspections that need to be done.
Would you like that at council level or both? I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to speak for the Conservation Commission, but I think we both agree that coming to the council would be great. Since they came and they did this preliminary or mid inspection update, and then come back and let us know if there were any issues that they found, and also would give any public participation an opportunity as well.
sure.
So we can certainly ask them at the next meeting to have a report for the council members, and
Maybe we could even have them do so they're talking like 1 to 3 years, maybe we can have them do a yearly update just of what they've done and then one at the end. I mean, I don't know.
I think that would be great, particularly since it has been quite some time since this was attempted, and I guess this is now by state mandate. So to keep us all informed, I think it's important, and residents need to know what's going on within their community, and for some on their properties as well.
And just so you guys are aware, they did do a somewhat significant lining project in Newington maybe 5-6 years ago. It came through Mill Pond Park. They did a lot of that stuff, and yeah, it's kind of interesting how they go in there and they just basically line the existing pipes that don't line up, have little cracks and stuff in it. And like you said, turns into a nice PVC pipe, and it just kind of flows, and it saves them a lot of construction costs and a lot less soil disturbance in regulated areas.
Given the fact too that we have main trunk lines going through Newington, and some homeowners in the past have been subject to, unfortunately, sewer backups, whatever. I mean, it is, and our infrastructure is quite old compared to some of the other towns, and the fact that we're getting significant development. I myself am curious, as well as Deputy Mayor Rada, that I'd like to know what the condition of our sewers are and what may or may not need to happen within the next 10 to 15 years.
One other thing that we both have, and Councilor Budrako may have some additional comments to make, is that you folks may or may not be aware that at last night's special meeting, let me back up, that our current town manager, Thomas Hutka, has taken a personal leave of absence. That said, at last night's special meeting, Jamie Trevethan, who is the director of the Senior and Disabled Center, was approved to be the interim town manager. So we wanted to make sure that folks were aware. I'm sure that she has stepped in and will be working very closely with staff, with the mayor, with the council, but we wanted to make sure that you are all aware of that. Councilor Budrako, I don't know if you have other comments to make?
No, not on that, but just in general, I want to thank the previous I want to thank Commissioner Siddell for his work and the previous officers. I know my heart kind of always goes out to this commission. You helped save Cedar Mountain and other things, but I also want to congratulate, Jeff, Dave, and Bernadette. I'm confident that this commission will be able to move forward in the way that I've always come to respect it. So thank you.
And I think we're all very interested in the conservation issues in our community, and our wetlands, our green spaces. And we look forward to communication and conversations with all of you. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next time I see we have something on life, research and education.
Yes, that's Alan Paskowitz's item that was put on the agenda a year or so ago, and he has some discussions every once in a while. I don't know if he has anything, but he usually.
Okay, Alan, we'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, Commissioner Pasquich here. This month, I don't have anything to bring forward. Thank you very much. So something may come up at the next meeting.
Very good. Next item is adjournment, but before we get there, I'd just like to thank Commissioner Siddell for, being the chair the last couple of years. He's done an outstanding job and really look forward to working with the commissioners. I can see that, many bright individuals on this commission, and your questions to the applicants this evening were, quite thorough and thoughtful. And I really appreciate that, not only as a commission member, but as a resident.
Thank you.
Welcome. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
To adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.
You as well.